That's a bill. That's a bill. Ooh, pizza coupons. That's a bill. Wait, what's this? Mail-in. Honey! Oh, what's up, Headliner Nation? Sorry about that. Didn't mean to keep you waiting. However, apparently Jake decided to send me some products in the mail from, we'll just say, an unknown website, and I was baking a cake. We'll call it that. Anyway, welcome back to the Fantasy Headliners. Kyle coming to you from the Draft.com studios to talk about quarterback and tight end rankings for week 6 of the fantasy football season. Keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, Thursday Night Football is already done, so you're not going to see any of those players listed in these rankings. However, you're going to see everybody that's playing on Sunday and Monday. Without further ado, we need to jump into the rankings right away, so let's kick it off with our top 20 quarterbacks. All right, the first two quarterbacks, number 1 and 2 in the rankings, are going to be facing each other this week. Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson. They are the QB3 and QB4. Watson QB3, Patrick Mahomes QB4 right now in fantasy football. And they're going to be playing each other this week in what will probably be a high-scoring game. Both of these defenses are giving up over 18 fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks. So we are definitely going to run with these two, my top 2 quarterbacks for this week. Coming in at number 3, Lamar Jackson. He has been a little bit more inconsistent since week 1 in the passing game. However, he's still the quarterback 1 right now in fantasy football, and he's been running the football more as well. 11 rushing attempts per game and 75 rush yards per game since week 1. So he's starting to use his legs a little bit more. That's what we really want to see from Lamar Jackson. Now, probably one outside of Patrick Mahomes, Deshaun Watson, Matt Ryan, and Kyler Murray are going to be a ton of fun to watch on Sunday. These two are definitely going to be in a battle. Probably a lot of points going back and forth, just like I mentioned. Both teams right now are top 4 in most points allowed per game to opposing quarterbacks. Both defenses have given up 12 passing touchdowns, which is tied for second most in the NFL, and both of the defenses are top 5 in most points allowed to opposing offenses. So a whole lot of points to be had in this game. Number 6, Russell Wilson. Dude's been looking great. MVP candidate, 100%. You're going to continue to throw him in your lineup. Dak Prescott is going to be coming in at number 7. A little bit more of limited upside this week for him, but that's okay. We're still going to run him out there. Now, number 8, I have Matthew Stafford a lot higher than the expert consensus rankings. I have Stafford probably almost 10 spots higher than the expert consensus rankings, anywhere between 7 and 10, depending on what website you're going to be looking at. However, I had a few questions about this on the start and sit episode, but I want to make myself clear with Matthew Stafford. He is a top 10 quarterback right now in fantasy football on a point per game basis. Now, remember, they had the bye week last week, so if you're looking at overall points, he's not going to be up there. But if you're looking at points per game, he is a top 10 fantasy quarterback right now. On the road, Monday night against a Green Bay defense that has been playing well. However, if you look at Matthew Stafford's career in Green Bay, he has excelled. 206 for 329 for a 62% completion percentage, 2,517 yards, 19 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. That is in 8 games in Green Bay. He has always played well in Green Bay. The only game in which he has thrown multiple interceptions in Green Bay was several years ago when Matt Flynn had to come in and outdueled Matthew Stafford. Not really outduel Matthew Stafford, but Stafford threw for 520 yards and 5 touchdowns that game. He did have 2 interceptions, but that's the only time he's thrown multiple interceptions. 4 games in Green Bay, he hasn't thrown an interception at all. So for everyone that thought, Kyle, are you crazy? What are you taking this week? Matthew Stafford is the guy I'm going to continue to run with. Gardner Minshew, I said it with him. He is not going to be a guy that I sit anymore. Minshew Mania has hit the Headliner Nation. We are definitely supporting this guy moving forward. He has continued to play well. He's taking care of the football. He's not throwing interceptions. He's a little banged up, it sounds like, maybe a growing injury or something, but that's okay. We are still going to roll him out there this week. Jameis Winston coming in at number 10. Jameis Winston up next. I will say, Jameis Winston, I liked his matchup a lot better last week. He didn't end up coming through, but he's going to be playing Carolina in London this week. There's going to be probably enough volume for him to be a quarterback one. So he's going to be a low quarterback one for me. Kirk Cousins coming in at number 11. Guy I had listed as a start. Probably have him a lot higher than what you'd be comfortable with how they have performed so far. But Philadelphia has given up 27 plus points to opposing offenses in all but one game so far this year. And Philadelphia is giving up the fourth most passing yards on the year. So definitely an opportunity here for Kirk Cousins. Now, one other thing I want to address in these rankings. You look at 12 and 13, you see Carson Wentz, Aaron Rodgers. And then at 14, 15, and 16, you see Baker Mayfield, Andy Dalton, and Phillip Rivers. If you watch my start and sit episode, I have Wentz and Rodgers listed as a sit, while I have Mayfield, Dalton, and Rivers listed as a start. Here's the thing, though. This is why I have them a little bit higher in the rankings. When I'm talking about starting players, I am always looking for the absolute most upside that I can from a player. However, when I do my rankings, I'm also looking at what are their floors going to look like. So with Wentz and Rodgers, I believe both of these guys have a better floor than Mayfield, Dalton, or Rivers. However, Mayfield, Dalton, and Rivers have a higher ceiling than Wentz or Rodgers, in my opinion. I do not love Wentz's matchup on the road against Minnesota. Minnesota's played 2 games at home this season. They've allowed 26 points combined to the opposing offenses. Wentz hasn't thrown for over 300 yards since week 1, and he's only thrown for 349 yards the last 2 games. Minnesota is also allowing the 8th fewest fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks, and they are allowing the 6th fewest passing yards. So, it is not a matchup that is going to present Carson Wentz with a lot of upside. However, I still believe, based on the performance of Mayfield and Dalton and Rivers so far this season, that Wentz could still have a better floor than them, and that's why he's a little bit higher in the rankings. I just wanted to clarify that. Same goes with Aaron Rodgers. Baker Mayfield, I think they get back on track this week. I know he had an awful start last week. I think they're going to come out. I know the offense has not looked good. However, it's going to pick up at some point in time, and I still believe that Baker Mayfield is going to turn things around. Andy Dalton has a nice ceiling this week. Phillip Rivers could potentially have a nice ceiling this week. Then we get down to the area of the sits that I had. Jared Goff, Teddy Bridgewater, Jimmy Garoppolo. Case Keenum is sneaking in at number 20 just because he's playing the Miami Dolphins defense. Anybody that plays Miami, they're going to get a little bit of a bump up. So I did end up bumping him up. Teddy Bridgewater, talking about him, I know he's coming off a really, really good game last week. However, he was only averaging he's still averaging 11.8 points per game this season. This is a big game against Tampa. Absolutely could have a nice ceiling here. But before the big game last week, he was only averaging 178 yards per game, and he only had 2 touchdowns on the year. So really blew up last week and had a great game, but is it going to happen? One key factor is Alvin Kamara. If they lose Alvin Kamara, that's a difficult weapon to lose for him. They're going to have to rely on Latavius Murray. So with no Alvin Kamara, that's why I definitely have Teddy Bridgewater a little bit lower at this point. So continue to keep an eye on that. We'll see what happens. Jimmy Garoppolo, another guy that has been playing well, but is he fantasy football reliable right now? I don't think there's going to be a great game script here unless Jared Goff and the Rams, who's right there next to Garoppolo at 17, Garoppolo at 19. If the Rams can build up a nice lead and the 49ers have to play from behind, then at that point I think Garoppolo's ceiling increases a little bit. But however, the Rams are going to be missing Todd Gurley possibly this week. Already going to be missing Brandon Cooks, it sounds like. Still has not cleared the concussion protocol. We'll see what happens. This is the week that we find out if the San Francisco defense is legit. If it is legit, then we're going to be looking at another game full of rushing attempts by the San Francisco 49ers. All right, let's transition over to the top 20 tight ends for this week. Austin Hooper going to be coming in at number 1, playing the Arizona Cardinals. They're giving up a ton of fantasy points per game to opposing tight ends. He has a huge week coming for him this week. He continues to also be a high-volume tight end as well, which is crazy on a team with Calvin Ridley, with Julio Jones, Mohamed Sanu, Devontae Freeman. He continues to be one of their better receiving options there. He's going to feast this week, a definite play, 100% at the top of my rankings. George Kittle at number 2, San Francisco 49ers. He continues to lead them in targets and yards and receptions. He's basically their number 1 option. You're gonna continue to roll him out on a regular basis as well. A lot of upside for him this week, being that top option. Number 3 is Mark Andrews. I got a question on the start sit video about him. A little bit of shade my way about how I said Mark Andrews continues to be a must start for me. Someone mentioned that he hasn't been that good since week 1. Well, yep, he hasn't been as good as week 1, but he's still produced. He's still the tight end 5 right now. He is still the number 1 option for Lamar Jackson. The one thing that I like about the matchup this week is I think Lamar Jackson's going to use his legs a lot this week. I think he's going to be running the ball quite often. And what that's going to do is that's going to pull the defense closer to the line. The more that Lamar Jackson runs, the closer the defense is going to creep up and keep an eye on him. That could let loose Mark Andrews for some bigger plays. I like him this week. Yes, he has been banged up. That is all right. We're still going to roll with him. He is the tight end 5 right now. You play the tight end 5 if they're available. Will Dissly, a must start every single week at this point. He's just continued to be absolutely fabulous for the Seattle Seahawks. Cleveland's giving up the 8th most fantasy points per game to tight ends. Dissly's tied for 2nd in targets on the Seahawks, and he is 1st in touchdowns. Zach Ertz coming in at number 5. Again, don't love the matchup for Carson Wentz this week. However, Zach Ertz will still be the number 1 target there, so he should see enough opportunities to get up here. Travis Kelce, I mentioned this in the start sit video that I didn't love his upside this week. The Texans are giving up the 5th fewest fantasy points per game to opposing tight ends right now, but they are giving up the 6th most fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers. I think you see a lot from the Kansas City wide receivers this weekend, and Travis Kelce gets limited a little bit. If that happens, he could fall a little bit more towards the back end of the tight end 1 spot here. Gerald Everett at number 7, really like his upside this week. Really excited to see him play. Todd Gurley is doubtful at this point. Brandon Cooks is still in the concussion protocol. If you lose both of those guys, Gerald Everett, tons of upside. Greg Olsen coming in at number 8. He has definitely started to flame out a little bit. 18 combined targets in weeks 1 and 2. However, he's only had 13 targets since week 2. And over the last 2 weeks, 2 catches for 5 yards. That's all he's had. Tampa Bay is giving up the 2nd most fantasy points per game to opposing tight ends right now. But I need to see Kyle Allen target Greg Olsen more often. If it doesn't happen this week, then we're going to have to move him to a sit for the time being until Cam Newton comes back. Delaney Walker coming in at number 9. The Denver Broncos really do a good job of shutting down wide receivers, so I expect to see a lot of Derrick Henry in this matchup. And if you see a lot of Derrick Henry and the wide receivers aren't doing anything, more than likely Delaney Walker will continue to be that number one option for Marcus Mariota and should see plentiful targets. Vance McDonald coming in at number 10. He's back and healthy. Glad to see him last week. Jordan Akins is probably a surprise introduction into the top 12 tight ends here. Now, him and Darren Fells both each have switched back and forth as finishing as a tight end in one the last couple of weeks. But with Jordan Akins, I really like his upside this week. He's seen a little bit more volume than Fells. That's why I like him a little bit more this week. But let me throw this stat out here to you real quick. I mentioned this in the tight end start and sit video. But Fells and Akins have combined for 28 targets, 19 receptions, 247 yards, and 5 touchdowns. Those are their numbers combined on the season. That would be 64.2 fantasy points in half PPR formats. That would make them the tight end 3 in half PPR. Those are some really awesome numbers. Kansas City is giving up the 6th most fantasy points per game to opposing tight ends. I like Jordan Akins a lot as a streamer this week. I will stream him over Darren Fells this week. But if you're in a super deep league and someone already has Akins, I still wouldn't mind Fells. I just think he's going to be uber touchdown dependent. He'll have to find the end zone. Hunter Henry. Ladies and gentlemen, our boy Hunter Henry back, ready to roll. I don't have him very high right now because I got to see him back. I got to see him ready to roll. I'm excited, though. I'm ready to see him back on the field. I love Hunter Henry, one of my favorite players. I'm really excited to see him start to produce. If you've held on to him, congratulations. Hopefully, he'll return some of that value this week and give you a decent week. Jimmy Graham, number 13. The Detroit Lions have done a good job at limiting tight ends so far. Not eliminating, limiting tight ends so far this year. They were able to keep Travis Kelce in check against Kansas City. They could do the same thing to Graham this week. Jared Cook, I don't like his upside this week. I did have him as a start last week. He returned that value. Not going with it this week. Jason Witten at 15, super touchdown dependent. OJ Howard, I just can't start him. This is a really tough matchup against the Carolina Panthers. They're only giving up, they're giving up the fourth fewest fantasy points per game to opposing tight ends right now. And OJ Howard, I know Byron Leftwich said that OJ Howard is going to get his time here very soon, but this is a really tough matchup to do it. And the other thing that concerns me as well is that Howard continues to outsnap Brate by like 30-ish%. But the margin of targets, it's not very much. Howard only has a few more targets than Brate, so I'm not loving those numbers there. TJ Hockenson at number 7. The only time he's produced this year has been against defenses that have had trouble stopping tight ends. So against Kansas City and Arizona. I just don't like him. He's super touchdown dependent. Matthew Stafford just hasn't looked his way, again, in matchups where opposing defenses have had issues looking at the tight end. Jeremy Sprinkle coming in at number 18. Could be a decent streaming option for you as well this week playing Miami. Everyone's a decent streaming option. Tyler Eifert at 19, and already mentioned Darren Fells as well and what we think about him this week. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it. We're going to wrap up this episode of the rankings for quarterbacks and tight ends. Thanks so much for tuning in. Before you leave the video, don't forget, if you're not a part of Headliner Nation yet, hit that subscribe button. Become a part of Headliner Nation today. Also hit that notification bell. So anytime we go live, which is Saturdays at 9 p.m., every Saturday at 9 p.m., we go live to answer your start-sit questions. You'll be notified then. And you're also notified when we drop content every single day of the week. Hit that like button as well. We appreciate the likes. Really helps us out here on YouTube. And then also leave a comment below. If you have any questions or anything like that, just let us know in the comments below. We'll be happy to answer as many as we possibly can. I am going to tell you this Sunday I'm going to spend a lot of time on YouTube in the morning. So if you leave any questions below and you don't have them answered right away, make sure that you're keeping an eye on it on Sunday morning, because I'm going to spend some time on YouTube answering as many of the comments from the week as possible. So again, Headliner Nation, appreciate you so much. Thanks so much for tuning into this episode of the Fantasy Headliners, and we'll catch you on the next one. Thanks, everybody, and I'm going to go bake some more cake. Have a good one.